London week 2, let's just get into it. I've been thinking about many things, none of which are London, because I'll tell you what, the heat wave cracked, it broke, and with it, it brought rain. It's like the end of the Cinderella story where she's like, waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought. That was me talking to London instead of Chad Michael Murray. And then, just as Chad Michael Murray kisses her on the face, on the lips, whoa, on the face, excuse me, it starts to rain. Or maybe it rains and then he kisses her. I'm not quite sure the order of events. That film I haven't watched in a while. I don't call it a movie, I call it film because it is a cult classic and give it the respect it deserves. I also saw Superman last night. I was about to call it Spider-Man, but they're all men and that's good. Batman, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, they're all the same thing. I know it's like a thing that they cast hot men for these roles. And I guess I knew that rationally, but emotionally it hadn't clicked in. And had I known that all these years, I would have been going to see these movies for a lot longer. What I also find really fun is the fact that they cast these like beautiful, sexy men in a male culture cinematic universe where I'm like, yeah, see, men like a hot man too, but they won't say it, but they don't want to admit it. Anyway, let's get into the real kind of meat and potatoes Sunday roast of what I want to talk about this week. Breathe in. Welcome to What the Fuchs with Jess Fuchs. Now breathe out. And scream. Because here's what's pissed Jess off this week. We obviously could talk about London and what I'm doing here and why I'm here, but I think that's boring as fuck. And I haven't even been concerned with it this week because as the sun stopped beating down and the clouds covered over the ugly London skyline, the breaking of the heat wave also broke my madness for this place. Yes, I am still grumpy to be here in some capacity. Am I still sitting in it? Am I still dealing with it? Of course, because to change my flight is more expensive, so I am going to change my attitude. That is the more emotionally taxing option, but it is the reality that I am in. So, what I have been thinking a lot about this week, I'm 31. I have no interests and hobbies. I have no personality. And that's really coming to light, it's really rearing its ugly head as I'm in a new place trying to decide what to do with myself all the time. As I try to settle into a new city, I am also trying to explore said city so that I'm like, oh, is this a place I want to be? As I ponder out of my window that you can't see, like Carrie Bradshaw wondering, I couldn't help but wonder, is London actually a place I want to spend my time? But as I've been trying to look into like, okay, do you join a society? Do you join a gym? Do you join a cooking course? Do you join these things? What do you do to make friends? What do you do to engage in the city in a way that's right for you? I keep coming back to like a homing pigeon with its address, its return address locked into that pea-sized brain. The fact that there is nothing I enjoy. I have nothing. There is no part of me that is consistent. I don't obsess over certain topics. I don't like particular music. I don't like an artist more than another. I have nothing. I am an empty shell of a person when it comes to interests and hobbies. And interests and hobbies are the bare minimum of what humans have to live for. I mean, if you watch Love on the Spectrum, one of the first things the dating coach teaches them is to ask people on a date, what are your interests and hobbies? There is a sense that people over-identify with their job. What you do is who you are. But I actually don't think that's true. I think all the people who are in a Quidditch league or extreme frisbee or they obsess over a certain band they've seen 1,000 times. That is how people define themselves. And I have none of those extracurriculars. I have nothing that defines me. I have nothing that I like more than anything else. So I have hit this wall where I thought, it's time. It's time to find an interest in a hobby because you cannot be faffing around like this anymore. I have absolutely nothing. And I have spent the week reflecting on the fact that how does one even determine their interest in their hobbies? Because it feels like everyone's walking around with just these interests and hobbies just naturally floating around their minds and their bodies and their spirits. I have nothing. I have nothing that I like. I have nothing. I mean, I know some things I don't like. Like, I don't like going to watch cricket. I find that fucking boring. But I don't have things that like, I'm not consistently watching one kind of documentary. I am not consistently going bowling and I'm part of a bowling league. And I think the thing I've been thinking about with this is like, an interest or a hobby, it is who you are to a degree. It's what you're passionate about when nothing else is going right. At least people take joy from something like that. And I have so little joy because I have nothing that I like. So what do you do? You know what I mean? So I've been trying to figure out. So this week I've been really reflecting on the idea of interests and hobbies. Now, I don't actually know the technical difference between the two, and I do want to look into that. So we're going to just look that up quickly, the difference between an interest and a hobby, because I don't know if there is one, and I don't know if I should have one over the other or both at the same time. Okay, let's check this out. An interest is a feeling or desire to learn about something or be involved in something, while a hobby is a specific activity pursued regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure or enjoyment. An interest is a feeling or desire to learn about something or be involved in something, while a hobby is specific activity pursued regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure or enjoyment. Hobbies are active pursuits, whereas interests can be more passive or observational. Hobbies generally require more consistent dedication and time investment than interests. An interest can evolve into a hobby if it leads to active engagement and consistent practice. An interest can evolve into a hobby if it leads... Okay. Oh, they give you an example. Okay. So an interest, a desire to learn about ancient history or the functioning of a new software. Huh? How the fuck are those two things aligned at all? Ancient history or a software? Hobby, actively reading history books, collecting artifacts, or using that software to create projects. Now, I think they're just giving two examples, but they're not really breaking it up with clarity. So let's just go with the history one. An interest is a desire to learn about ancient history. Well, no. So what? You just sit there and you go, I desire to learn about ancient history. Yay, I have an interest. No, that's far too superficial. I don't agree with that at all. But then the hobby part of it is actively reading history books, collecting artifacts. Okay, I understand that now. I wish that I had a craving for something to do certain things. You know, like for example, there's this movie that I loved watching growing up. And the dad in it, he would always paint these like little army figurines, and he was like an ex-colonel or something like that, and so every scene that he's in, he's painting these little gun shaped, like these little guys who, like, they're plastic figurines, but he was painting them to be realistic. Was it called Girls Just Want to Have Fun, or All I Want to Do Is Have Fun? It's with Sarah Jessica Parker, and she's a dancer, and it's the most phenomenal film I've ever seen in my whole life. And I have never actually met someone who has seen the same film. There are certain films that I grew up on that were like literally like home base for me, and I have never met another person who has watched or enjoyed these films. And I'm like, did my parents get together and like greenlight these films? Like, I don't really understand. Did they like self-fund it and make it specific to like something I would enjoy? Because I've never met another person who's watched that Sarah Jessica Parker classic. The same with a movie called Andre. If anyone has seen Andre, that movie is unbelievable. And I have never met another person who has seen it. And I am getting ASMR level quiet because I am living with a bunch of people and I don't really know where they are, but it sounds like they're right outside my door. And it does make me self-conscious, the fact that they're right outside my door. And even though I put this on public for people to see and listen to and be a part of, there is a difference between recording something in the privacy of your own space so that no one is listening and then broadcasting it to billions of people versus actually having a live audience outside your door that you don't consent to listening to it. So this is the ASMR portion of the podcast. Maybe I'll get into ASMR professionally. I would happily read porn like this. You know what I mean? I do think I have a nice voice for it. Not right now. I'm a bit stuffy in the nose because I keep sleeping with the aircon on because it is too hot in this house. It's too hot in this country for a place that they all complain about being cold all the time. I'm yet to see that shit. I am going to talk in a dulcet tone until I feel safe in my own space again. So I want to apologize for that because I don't feel comfortable screaming about interests and hobbies. Anyway, the point is that in this movie, he is constantly painting these tiny little figurines. And I do think that there are certain things in film and movies and like TV that are like man culture. Like to me, painting little figurines or doing anything war related in their like spare time as an interest or a hobby just feels like dad culture. Like you can be a lesbian dad culture who engages in dad culture. You can be a non-binary person who engages in dad culture. Like there are certain things like just the polo shirt with the like like the like cargo pants, dad culture. You can be any sexuality, any gender, any whatever, and still be in dad culture. It's the same, in movies, whenever there's like a conversation happening between a mum and a dad, and the mum is sitting in bed, like rubbing her elbows and hands with cream, that's mum culture. Again, you can be anything, anyone, any age, but you can be engaging in mum culture in that capacity. That is my belief about the difference between dad and mum culture as portrayed in cinema. I will write a thesis about this. Maybe that is my hobby and interest. Maybe that is something I get really into, in looking at the minute details between mum and dad culture in cinema. I'm already falling asleep at the wheel with that one. I've been really thinking about how can I actually expand my palette and my areas of interest, because I just don't think it's good to be monofocused. Yes, of course, my job requires that to some degree, but then you end up just getting comedians or artists or people who are just so boring. It's like, think about anybody who all they have is their job. Like, I know some lawyers and they have nothing. They do nothing else. And then I know other lawyers who have like a community and play soccer and do all these fun things that their lives are like, they love ketamine. You know what I mean? It's like that's an interest or a hobby. Is I have a friend who is a lawyer, but also has so many other elements to their lives. Whereas I have other lawyer friends who literally have nothing else. And then what happens is they work 90 hours a week and they think that's something to hang their hat up on. They think that's something that's impressive or interesting. I do not give a fuck. I am over people who think that it is important or interesting to brag about the number of hours that they spend in an office doing work that no one gives a fuck about. And in that way, I do think interests and hobbies are so integral, and it can be anything. I don't think an interest or a hobby has to be expansive. I think it can be like, you love cooking. You like to cook and feed your friends and have little dinner parties. That could be enough for me. I'm not looking for something too extreme. I'm not looking for something ridiculous. I am a downtown chill girl who just needs something to live for other than her job. And I love my job, don't get me wrong. I spend majority of my day engaging in, whether it's watching, listening to, writing, thinking about comedy. And I think that will be me for the rest of my life. However, I think as your hobbies or interests, what started as a hobby or an interest, as in I always wanted to have a career in the arts. I always wanted to be a comedian. But at first I had to have like a 9 to 5, and I was balancing all of that shit with pursuing improv, with pursuing open mics, with pursuing stand-up. But then as it's transitioned into having that as more of a full-time job, I have lost what was once the interest, the hobby, the connection to something other than like my shitty job. And over the years, I have not considered pursuing something considered putting spokes on the fire, or what's the right, like I haven't considered caring or fostering for a new interest or hobby as I've been working at comedy. And so now I find myself in a new city, in a new place, reflecting on the fact that I have no personality, nothing to engage in, nothing to do, because I don't know what I like or who I am or who gives a fuck. You know what I mean? So this week I've really been thinking about that, and I'm a doer. I am not someone who just is like, oh, okay, you've got no personality, let's just keep living like that. Nay to the 10th degree, to the highest degree imaginable. So I started to think about, okay, how do we troubleshoot this problem? How do we find you interests and hobbies to balance your life out more, to make sure that you aren't just a fucking waif of a person? I mean, physically, yes, a waif through and through, unfortunately, so thin, concerningly so. But what do we do, right? So I started to think about like, okay, how does one identify an interest or a hobby that they have? And I don't know, maybe my definition is too strict, maybe it's too narrow. Like in my mind, I'm like, an interest or a hobby has to be something that's like quite operational, like that like I know people who go and play, like there's this game called Clock on the Tower, or Tower on the Clock, or Clock Blood Orange or something. I went and did the live play version for a show this week in London. So basically, it's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons-y type thing. Everyone gets a character. I don't even know how Dungeons and Dragons work, if I'm really being honest with you, but I just know that it's like a game, right? And everyone gets a character, and then you're trying to determine who is the evil person, and everyone's trying to throw clues, and you're whatever, right? I don't fucking know. I didn't even know how to do it when I was playing the game, let alone how to explain it to anyone who's never heard of it. The point is that I was speaking to some of the people who were on the panel after playing the other characters, and I was like, and they were like, if you ever want to play it again, I said, bite your tongue. I said, in no way do I want to do this ever again. And they were like, oh, sorry. And I was like, no, I'm just not good at it. And they were like, you don't have to be good at it. And I was like, what the fuck is the point of a hobby or an interest if you're not incredible at it, if you can't professionalize that, if you can't go pro? And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe this is a problem I have, thinking if you're good at something, then you can use that to do something professional with it. But then you aren't left of the joy of it. But is there joy in anything? If not, you're good at it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very hard thing. During the pandemic, I did slightly, for a short period of time, have a hobby of doing pottery. But that is expensive and it's too difficult to do. I'm not going to get everything to have the stuff at home. That for a brief period, I saw the shining beacon of a hobby or an interest, and that was fun because I didn't feel the need to be good at it, but it was enjoyable. But here's the thing, I wasn't Googling things afterwards. I wasn't trying to figure out things after. And to me, I think if there is an obsessiveness to the hobby, like when I speak to friends who are like obsessed with Lady Gaga or the Veronicas, I don't know, they know things about them. They've read their Wikipedia page. They've absorbed the information. I can't absorb anything. I was reflecting on what are the things that I like to do, right? In the past when I've traveled, or in the past when I'm like watching something, what do I enjoy doing? Now, I did take a personal day when I worked in a corporate setting to go and do a Segway tour in Washington, D.C. In that way, the question is, do I like Segway tours? Do I like Segways? Or do I like history? Or do I like a combination of the three? Because every single city I've ever been in, I do engage in a Segway tour. I think it is the only way to see a city. I think it is also dangerous, just enough, but not too much, you know? So I love doing Segways. Like literally, I had to go to DC one weekend to do a comedy festival show when I was living in America. And I wanted to do a Segway tour. Now, the only option for a Segway tour was to do it on a Monday because the Sunday it was shut for some reason. The Saturday I was performing and doing all this stuff. I sent an email. Hey, so sorry everyone. I'm taking a sick day. What do you think I did on that sick day? Oh, I had a sick day, bitch. I went on a Segway tour all over DC and it was electric. It was raining, so I had to wear a one-size-fits-all poncho, which I always hold my breath about when I see one-size-fits-all. I go, ha, 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 I'll show you, bitch. I'll show you one-size-fits-all. I don't know if it's going to fit this all, but yeah, we're going to give it a go. And I went around the city and I did the DC tour and I loved it. And I've done Segway tours in Berlin and where else have I done it? And Rome and oh god, anywhere and everywhere that's got a Segway tour that I have been, I've put my big body on those big wheels and I've roamed around the city. You know that shit. So is the question there, when I look at the pattern of doing Segway tours, do I like Segways? Do I want to own a Segway? Can you own a Segway? Is it kind of like, you know, feral animals? You can't own a tiger in London City. Can I own a Segway in London? I don't think so. So how does one then engage with a hobby that isn't easily transportable? The irony of that being that a Segway is easily transportable, because I can't travel the world and pack my Segway in my little Mary Poppins bag, can I? So I don't really want to have a Segway interest or hobby. Then the other question is, okay, so I went and I saw the history of DC. I roamed around and I learned about all the history. I couldn't tell you a single fucking fact. I couldn't tell you a single fucking fact about that. Therefore, I wonder if history is just something I'm interested in because there's this bitchy little story, which is what I did during high school. In high school, for your electives, I chose all history electives. I did ancient history, I did modern history, and I did extension history, which is just basically where you pick a thesis. And I wrote my thesis about pirates and representation in film. So I just had an excuse to be able to watch Pirates of the Caribbean for 6 months and then write a paper in quotes about that. Yeah, right. And the thing with history is you have to remember dates and vibes and sides and opinions. And I'm like, I don't remember that. My memory doesn't work for that stuff. So then I'm picking an interest or a hobby that I'm set to fail at. Now, why would I do that if I picked history? What are some other things I like doing? I literally can't think of anything. Like if I always watch rom-coms, but you can't really, that's an interest, I guess, but you can't, how do you turn that into a hobby? Fuck if I know. What else do I like doing? I like thrifting, I like shopping, but then I'm like, is that just kind of the consumerist in me just enjoying that stuff? Because I don't actually give a fuck about like fashion or fashion houses or like good shit. I don't really give a shit about that. And I'm not going to spend my time reading and watching the fashion shows each week or each month or whatever, whenever it's New York Fashion Week. I don't really care about that. So therefore, it makes me think, well, are you actually interested in fashion or do you just like fashion for yourself? Because I would never spend my time learning. I don't think my love of thrifting for myself and shopping for myself has a pipeline through to hobby or interest, neighborhood, because I don't do any of the behaviors that relate to those things. I just like walking through a thrift shop. Call me old-fashioned. I just like walking through a thrift shop and faffing through all of the stuff and looking at it and picking things that I like. That's not an interest or a hobby. What am I going to do? As a doer, I didn't want to leave this lack of personality, interests, or hobbies to chance, because I don't want to be an old person with no interests. I want to go to, those people where they're just like, when they're doing their eulogy and they're like, God, they loved sailing. So today we're burying them with an oar. I want to have something that, like an old Viking sailor or an old Egyptian king or pharaoh, you can put all of my favorite things inside my box when you bury me ass up. I want to be buried with my face in the pillow. Actually, no. As one of my jokes, my stand-up comedy jokes says, I want to be buried the way that I sleep. My hand is going to be underneath the pillow. I'm on my side. I have a pillow between my knees, a pillow between my chest, and I am hugging that. I want to be on my side, like in a nice, comfortable sleeping position, and then tucked in around all the crevices of my body and the crevices of the extra large box that I get probably from Tesco Express, which is just... I'm sure they make coffins. No, what's the place that makes coffins? Aldi. All of the little trinkets that I have spent my life on. Almost like a human burial scrapbook. If I get into crocheting, you tuck a crocheted blanket around my body. If I get into history, you bury a little artifact or a little archaeologist brush. I want all of those things. I don't want an empty coffin. I want, when you pick my coffin up, it to rattle with all of the things that I spent my life doing. But at this rate, you can't bury me with a Segway. Maybe you could do like a taxidermy, me on a Segway, kind of like posed, looking out. That would be kind of stunning. Not mad about that. Now, I don't know why I hyperfixate on the idea of having an interest or a hobby, but I do think it's just important to have a variety of interests. I think that it is incredibly boring to just be one note. And I look around me and I think majority of the people that I know have things that they enjoy doing. Even if it's as simple as one of my friends. He has a great career, but he loves making food. He loves providing for people. And I think there's something so satisfying and fulfilling about that. And I do like that. If I had a beautiful home, I would do the home up and I would have dinner parties and stuff like that. Is that an interest or a hobby? Because I think the act of him cooking and serving people and kind of making community, that is interest/hobby world. But then if I was to have people over, I guess that is. Maybe I am too harsh on myself about the technical definition. In search for an answer, in search for a personality as a 31-year-old woman with no interests or hobbies, I have made a list of things that I am going to do whilst I'm in London over the next couple of months in order to uncover, to find an interest or a hobby that I can hang my hat on. So here is a list of some of the ones that I am going to do and engage in over the next couple of months. Now, if you have any suggestions, if you yourself have an interest or a hobby, like for example, I know that technically reading is an interest or a hobby, but I myself, I don't even know what you do with that information. Like, how do I engage in an interest or a hobby that's reading? I guess I would just read. But then I go, what am I reading? And then it falls apart on itself, that interest or the hobby. So here's a list of some interests and hobbies that I thought, when I boiled it down, I said I like going on these Segway tours. Oh my gosh, I went on like a ghost tour once. Okay, now do I believe in ghosts? That's too loaded a question for me to even get into, because if I say yes to that, then I have to think about, do I even believe in star signs? And those two things connect to me because they're woohoo. And then, further along from that is then I have to ask myself, what happens when you die? And I don't know if I have the capacity to do that today or ever. Whether I believe in ghosts, I don't think so. So then the hobby and interest is not ghosting. The hobby and interest is just going and doing something funny. I think I will do anything. Like, I want to do a ghost tour here, but it's not because I am a believer in ghosts. I think because I like the backstory. Maybe can my interest and hobby be gossip and hearing people's bullshit? Is that allowed? Here's a list of the things that I think I'm going to spend some time doing whilst in London in order to get to the bottom of, do I have any hobbies or interests? And by extension, does that give me a personality? Because at this point I feel as milquetoast as a cardboard box you pack your nothing in to move. Okay? And by nothing I mean all the shit in your house that you go, how did we get this? Where did we get this? We've lived here 4 years. How did we get this? That's what I feel like as a person, just in a sack of skin and blood. All right, the Freud Museum. Now, as some of you know my history with psychology, I did 2 years. They tried to make me do some math. I stood up, I said, not on my watch. And if anyone can tell me how to read this watch, because I also don't know how to do analog or whatever the right... Is it analog? Yeah, because digital is what's on your iPhone. But I am interested to see what sort of shit they're floating around a Freud museum, because he was a contentious figure and he came up with a lot of interesting stuff. Is that me liking the gossip of were people pro or anti-Freud, or am I interested in psychology? I don't know if I want my interest or hobby to be psychology, because I want to judge you based off of gut instinct, not off actual technical stuff. Whereas if I say that I have an interest in psychology, it feels like I have to be a bit more technical. Not interested. Not interested in a hobby or an interest that has like technical requirements. Like, I don't want to have to remember the rules to your game, your board game. I don't want to do Dungeons and Dragons so that I have to remember all the fucking rules. Now, Jack the Ripper tour. Oh, God, yes. Now, I don't really get wet for all of those like murder mystery things that a lot of women fall asleep listening to. Like, there's a big stereotype that females like to listen to like murder documentaries, and that is quite soothing in some fucked up way. I don't really care for that. That doesn't do anything for me. But Jack the Ripper tour, I think it's the walking around the old cobblestone streets in London. Love that. It's learning about like what was going on at the time. See, maybe I am a history person, but I don't want to remember I don't know the details, you know? Now, the Sherlock Holmes Museum. Fascinating. That to me, I imagine, is just basically an escape room, which I am terrible at because I'm not good at putting clues together. I get too distracted. I am terrible in an escape room. I've done one once. I went with my family. Everyone else was really into it. The most that I could give of myself to that place is I found out what room we were in. It was the French room. That was the theme of the space. So I dressed in theme. I dressed like a French person. I wore a beret. I wore elbow length gloves. Like, that was my contribution. Could I solve any of the clues? No. Was I a hindrance? 100%. So do I think being a Sherlock Holmes type character and solving unsolved murders, mysteries and stuff is up my alley? No, but I thought I'd throw it onto the list of things I'll try, because it is in the world of history. It is in the world of kind of like some of the things I guess I've enjoyed in the past. Going on the London Eye, I guess my interest or hobby could just be tourism, but that's an expensive hobby to have. And then that means that if you're poor, you cannot engage in your hobby. So then you kind of get back to square one, which is where I'm at now, which is like I have nothing that I can do or like. Brick Street. Now, that is just thrifting. Do I want to do that? For sure, because I like thrifting, but I don't think that's going to help me get to the bottom of like, how does one turn thrifting into a hobby or an interest, unless I myself then started to source old thrifted pieces and then like sell them, but then that's trying to turn it into a business. Do you see where I talk myself in and out of everything? It's a powerful thing. The Natural History Museum, I do think I'm a bit of a history buff looking at my list. But that Natural History Museum, maybe that's too, I think I need to think of a few, like go do a cooking class, go do a, help me, you know what I mean? That's what I need from you guys. Churchill war rooms. Now, I don't give a fuck about Churchill or war rooms, to be honest, but I just thought maybe the combination of history and something interactive. Also, I thought maybe he could be my hyperfixation for a while. Maybe I'll just get really into Churchill. Maybe instead of finding something that I do, I find someone that I do, if you know what I'm saying, girls. I'd rather find someone whose like life I can hyperfixate on and just like learn everything about and then just become like really obsessed. Then I thought the Globe Theatre performance. So that's just a classic London thing. Go see some theatre. Maybe I'll get really into the theatre, but I think that might be too close to stand-up, in which case then I think I'm double dipping my toe into something that's just going to confuse me and ultimately not be good. Then we have the catacombs. Now, I don't actually know what the catacombs are in London. I do know that in Paris there are catacombs, and I know that because I did a drum roll please ghost tour when I was in Paris a couple of years ago. Was it one of the best nights of my life? You betcha, bitch. It was phenomenal. And what I found phenomenal about that was learning that basically every single place we went, and in fairness it is a ghost tour, so it makes sense for her to talk about this, but every single place we went, she was like, and there we have the burial for the 500 people who were killed in 2,000 years ago. And I'm like, what the fuck? And she's talking about something that happened and the government did this and the government did that, or these people did this or these people did that, and then there's all these people that are just dead, buried beneath us. And this is where the plague happened, thousands of dead bodies beneath us. I thought, I am walking on a city of bones. And then in Paris, you can go in these tunnels underneath the streets, which are called the catacombs, and it's just bones and dead people. And I think that would scare me a bit, to be honest. But maybe I could get into it. So maybe I'll go do the catacombs if they've got them here. Then we have the Thames River cruise. I thought maybe I could get into sailing. I don't know, that's different to a cruise, but I thought maybe I'll get into boats. I could be a boat guy. I don't have the budget for it, but I thought maybe I'll really take to being on water. I mean, I like swimming, so perhaps I will by extension like being on River Thames cruise. Stonehenge, maybe I'll become a conspiracy theorist. Maybe I could be someone who enjoys wondering if it was aliens or if it was people and slaves who had to schlep it miles and miles and miles to like get these stones. I'm losing steam because these all just seem pointless. I do think I'll try go see Stonehenge because I'm like, sure, whatever. And again, I think I'd appreciate the history of it or the conspiratorial element. And I'd probably listen to a podcast on the train to Stonehenge and be like, yeah, it was the aliens. You know, I think I could get really into conspiracy world if I let myself. Maybe I'm going to fall really deep into the Reddit. See, the people on Reddit, the people who engage in Reddit subculture and Reddit subthreads and all that stuff, those people have real deep and interesting interests and hobbies, and it's like they spend all their time on these chats. I once met someone who told me that some of his best friends were people he met on Twitter. I said, what? I said, what the fuck, sir? People like that, they have these parasocial relationships with people that they have a deep connection with because they have the same interests and hobbies, yet they have never met in real life. And I don't necessarily think that means that's a friend, but hey, God bless modern times. Lastly, sports game. Do I think in any way that I'm going to become like a polo girl or a cricket boy? I don't think so. I don't think that's within my DNA to give a fuck. I've gone to cricket before. Snooze fest. But I do think that's a way to engage in London culture, and I am in search of both enjoying the culture in London and also finding a personality. Those are my those are the two footprints in the sand, if you will, that I am looking for. I don't think I have anything left to tell you today. I think if you have an interest or a hobby that you engage in, please send it along. I am curious to hear what other people do with their spare time or what they enjoy doing. I maybe am being a bit too strict on what is technically an interest or a hobby. Perhaps something I need to reflect on is that, because as I walk forward to find a solution to this problem, I don't think I'll find one with a nasty, rotten attitude, which is what I feel I'm approaching this with. I'm going to try to do some of the things on that list over the next week or two. I will report back to let you know if I am any closer to finding a personality. And if you yourself have anything you'd like to share in terms of how you keep yourself busy outside of however you make your money 9 to 5, please pass it along. I'm curious how other people function in this world, because not that I don't think I'm functioning, I am functioning, but I am wondering, how does one fill their time? How does one make themselves a well-rounded person? Because when people like ask questions of like, what do you do? What do you like? I'm like, judging people, making psychological decisions about who you are and why you are the way you are. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to psychoanalyze you without a degree? Because I'm doing it anyway and I love it and I do have a passion for it. As soon as the camera switches off, I'm going to sit here for the next 7 to 12 hours just thinking about this, just really mulling it over in my mind. Maybe that's my passion or hobby, is my hobby or interest is trying to find a hobby or interest. If you have any hobbies or interests, anything you think I might like, even if it's really niche or weird, send it my way. All right, for now, I leave you in my search for a personality. Bye, Jess. Bye, guys. I'm saying bye, Jess, to me because I'm editing, and this will be the last thing I see. Bye, guys. See you later. Bye. Bye, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good week. Bye. Yeah.